The vastness of space stretched endlessly beyond the armoured hull of the SS Droughtbringer, a titanic war vessel of the Xanthar Dominion. Built for conquest, shaped by generations of desert-dwelling warlords, and engineered to thrive in the most barren, sun-scorched hellscapes, the ship represented everything its creator stood for: dominance, power, and an unyielding resistance to moisture. Inside its command chamber, an intimidating figure loomed over a holographic projection of a blue-green planet. Supreme Commander Gorlak the Unquenchable, a warrior of legend, stood with his 4 powerful arms crossed over his armored chest, his chitinous exoskeleton gleaming in the dim red lighting of the war room. Before him, his 2 most trusted lieutenants stood at attention: Brugg the tactical genius and Zargax the bonecracker. Brugg, known for his alleged strategic brilliance, had the hunched posture of one constantly deep in thought, but his massive, sunken black eyes flickered with concern as he analysed the readings before him. His mandibles twitched, a sign of barely contained doubt. Zargax, the brute of the trio, was less about thinking and more about crushing things beneath his massive, clawed hands. His imposing frame made even other Xantharians look small. The commander's second-in-command, he had a legendary reputation for cracking the bones of lesser species with his massive rifle-hammer hybrid, an advanced firearm that doubled as a brutal melee weapon, though his brain had seen far less exercise than his claws. Gorlak narrowed his piercing sunken gaze at the holographic display of Earth, then let out a deep, guttural chuckle. "I am truly baffled," Gorlak rumbled, his voice like sand grinding against metal. "How could so many have failed to subjugate such pitiful creatures?" Brugg glanced at Zargax, who seemed more focused on flexing his clawed fingers menacingly at the floating projection of Earth than actually listening. "It is a mystery, Supreme Commander," Brugg said hesitantly, tapping at the control panel. "The humans have repelled numerous invasions in the past, but their technology is primitive compared to ours. Their soldiers are soft, their weapons outdated, and their biology laughable. They lack natural armor, they require constant hydration, and worst of all—" Brugg's mandibles clicked. "They appear to have no exoskeletons at all." Zargax let out a harsh bark of laughter, his massive spiked arms folding over his chest. "Spineless flesh bags! How do they even survive their own planet?" Gorlak allowed himself a small, satisfied smirk. "They don't, not for long." He turned to Brugg, his blackened eyes gleaming with arrogance. "Give me the full report on their defenses. I want to see what pathetic resistance awaits our arrival." Brugg hesitated for a brief moment, then activated the holoscreen, bringing up various data points. He gestured with his claw, and lines of information scrolled across the display. "Earth has several nations with independent military forces," Brugg began, "though none pose any serious threat to our superior technology. Their armies rely on combustion-based weapons, loud, slow, and completely ineffective against our exoskeletons." "And their planetary defenses?" Gorlak pressed, his eyes narrowing. Brugg shook his head. "Non-existent. No orbital defense systems, no planetary shield. They are exposed, vulnerable, and woefully unprepared for an invasion." Gorlak let out a low, pleased hum. "And yet," he mused, "they have driven back previous invasions. How?" Brugg hesitated. This was the part he had been dreading. "Reports are conflicting, Supreme Commander." "Conflicting?" Gorlak echoed, his voice dangerously low. "Yes," Brugg admitted. "Some say the humans possess unmatched strategic cunning, able to turn even the most desperate situation into a victory. Others claim their environment itself fights for them, as though the very planet despises intruders." Zargax let out another harsh laugh, slamming a clawed fist onto the table. "Superstition! Their environment? A threat to us? Ha! We are the sons of the Great Furnace. We do not fear dirt and air." Gorlak grinned at Zargax's outburst. That was the spirit. "Indeed," Gorlak said, his voice brimming with confidence, "which is why I shall rectify the failures of our predecessors. We shall do what no other species has accomplished." He turned to face them both, raising his chin. "We will begin the invasion immediately." Brugg's mandibles twitched. There it was, the moment he had feared. "Sir," he said slowly, "before we finalize our strategy, have you selected our landing site?" Gorlak grinned. "Of course. We shall strike where the humans are weakest, where they fear to tread." He gestured at the holomap, zooming in on the vast green stretch of South America. A particular dark mass of foliage and rivers stood out. "Here." The humans call it the Amazon. Brugg felt his inner organs tighten. Sir? Zargax squinted at the screen. Humph, why there? Gorlak clasped his massive claws behind his back, pacing, because it is an unclaimed paradise. Look at the data. Our long-range planetary scans show that this region absorbs vast amounts of solar energy. That can only mean one thing. It is a hot, arid region, much like our homeworld, but with additional plant life. It will serve as an excellent foothold. We detect no human cities there, proving that the creatures avoid it out of fear or weakness. The wildlife is insignificant. Nothing larger than a small mammal exists in this area. We have nothing to fear. And most importantly, Gorlak turned toward them, his voice thick with pride. It will be our greatest conquest. If we conquer the worst Earth has to offer, we will prove our superiority beyond question. Brugg shifted uneasily, glancing at the planetary scans again. Something about this didn't sit right. He had seen footage of past failed invasions. Humans weren't as weak as their lack of planetary defenses suggested. And now, they were starting in a region completely opposite to their natural habitat. Supreme Commander, if I may, Brugg chose his words carefully, our species thrives in dry, arid conditions. This region appears to be different. Perhaps a reconnaissance team should be sent first. Zargax, who had been staring blankly at the holographic map, suddenly grunted. Humph, no need. Jungle means many things to crush. He cracked his thick, plated knuckles with a disturbing crunch, his mandibles twitching in excitement. Yes, many things to crush, many skulls to break, many bones to grind into sand. I like this jungle. Brugg blinked. You say that for everything. You don't even know what a jungle is. Zargax grinned, flexing his clawed fists. Exactly. Brugg sighed. He was arguing with a boulder, and that boulder had anger issues. Gorlak's mandibles flared with annoyance. Do you dare question my judgment, Brugg? Brugg immediately lowered his head in submission. No, Supreme Commander. I merely seek to ensure our victory. Victory is assured. Gorlak rose from his throne, his towering form casting a long shadow over his subordinates. He raised a clawed fist, his voice booming with unshakable arrogance. The humans flee from this place. That means it belongs to us now. A moment of silence followed. Brugg, feeling his very exoskeleton sweating from stress, nodded. Of course, Supreme Commander, as you command. Under his breath. Yeah, I'm sure there's a perfectly good reason the humans avoid it. Zargax, always the brute, simply cracked his thick, clawed knuckles again. We shall crush whatever stands in our way. Excellent. Gorlak turned back toward the holographic display, admiring the vast green wilderness he believed would be his stepping stone to planetary domination. Prepare the landing forces. We descend upon this Amazon at once. And with that, the invasion began. The UN, Orbital Defense Command, a state-of-the-art military observatory hovering in geostationary orbit, had seen its fair share of overconfident extraterrestrials making terrible life choices. Over the years, Earth had been invaded, attacked, claimed, and liberated by a variety of extraterrestrial species, all of whom had come to the same tragic realization. Humans were way harder to conquer than expected. Inside the control room, radar screens beeped softly, tracking the latest batch of incoming alien invaders. Massive warships, gleaming in beige and bronze, loomed ominously over the planet, casting long shadows over the Amazon rainforest below. A young officer, Second Lieutenant Diaz, stared at the screens, unimpressed. He leaned back in his chair, lazily stirring a cup of coffee. Sir? What number of invasion attempt is this? He asked, taking a sip. Across from him, Colonel Harrison, a grizzled veteran who had long since stopped being surprised by alien stupidity, didn't even glance up from his tablet. At least the 11th, Harrison muttered, scrolling through his emails. Might be 12th. Honestly, I stopped keeping count after the squid guys tried to terraform the Sahara. Diaz nodded thoughtfully. Yeah, that was a weird one. Then he squinted at the screen. His eyes widened slightly. Wait, are they starting with the Amazon? Now Harrison looked up. He raised an eyebrow, set his tablet down, and leaned forward. The two men stared at the tactical display, watching as the alien fleet positioned itself directly over one of the deadliest, most unforgiving environments on Earth. There was a pause. Then Harrison let out a short, amused chuckle. Oh, this is going to be fun. He took a long sip of coffee. Diaz, still watching the screens, frowned. So, what should we do now? Harrison leaned back in his chair, stretching. We worry about them after they actually make it out of the Amazon. Until then," he gestured at the screen, "let's just sit back and enjoy the show." Diaz considered that for a moment, then shrugged and took another sip of coffee. The mighty SS Droughtbringer hovered over the endless sea of green, its engines humming with power as it prepared for what its crew assumed would be a routine planetary landing. Inside the command bridge, Supreme Commander Gorlak the Unquenchable stood with his arms crossed, basking in the glow of his inevitable victory. Beside him, Lieutenant Brugg, the tactical genius, stared at the monitors with less enthusiasm. Brugg cleared his throat. "Sir, there appears to be no feasible landing site. The terrain is problematic. No flat, stable ground, no desert, only dense plant life and—" Gorlak waved a dismissive claw. "Nonsense! Just land it! Our mighty ship will crush these pathetic earth plants beneath its bulk." He puffed out his armored chest. "The SS Droughtbringer is a marvel of engineering. It is massive and mighty." He grinned confidently. What could go wrong? The moment the landing sequence started, things went horribly, spectacularly wrong. The ship's massive hull descended, flattening hundreds of trees beneath it. The dense canopy snapped like twigs, but the jungle had a few surprises of its own. A single, stubborn tree, known as the piranha palm, Moratiella aculeata, refused to go down without a fight. As the SS Droughtbringer descended, one particularly massive piranha palm speared through the lower docking bay, finding its way through joints, piercing straight through the hull like a javelin through butter. Horrible screeching metal echoed through the corridors. The ship lurched violently, causing alarms to blare. Then, the real problem began. The terrain wasn't flat. The ship's landing gear sank into soft, uneven jungle soil, causing the entire colossal vessel to tilt dangerously to one side. Inside the ship, chaos erupted. Red warning lights flashed across every screen, emergency klaxons screamed, crew members tumbled like dominoes. In the bridge, Brugg grabbed onto a railing, struggling to stay upright. "Sir, the ship is tilting. The terrain cannot support our—" Zargax, hanging onto a console, snarled. "My lord, a tree has penetrated the docking bay. We are impaled." Gorlak, still gripping the command chair as the floor tilted, refused to look concerned. "Impossible. No mere tree could—" Crack! A bulkhead near the lower deck gave way, crushed under the sheer weight of the listing ship. Sparks flew, and several panels exploded in showers of fire and smoke. A crew member tumbled past the bridge doorway, yelling as he slid uncontrollably down the slanted floor. "Everything is sideways!" he screamed as he disappeared into the smoke. Zargax gritted his mandibles. "The lower decks are compromised. Sections 14 through 22 are now jungle accessible." Brugg, barely keeping himself upright, turned to Gorlak. "Sir, if we don't stabilize, we could—" Gorlak slammed a fist against his throne. "Enough!" Despite the obvious catastrophe, he straightened his posture, eyes burning with defiance. "The humans must have planted these trees to stop us. We are already winning if they resort to such cowardly tactics." Zargax, who had been staring at the screen that displayed the impaled ship's lower hull for a full minute, suddenly snarled and punched the nearest console. "Cursed human tree weapons! I shall punch it until it dies!" Inside the UN Orbital Defense Command, the control room was silent for 5 full seconds as the SS Droughtbringer wobbled, groaned, and finally came to a disastrous lopsided halt. Then, laughter erupted. Colonel Harrison leaned back in his chair, grinning as he watched the live feed of the alien disaster unfold. "Oh ho ho, I give 'em 2 days." Diaz, still sipping his coffee, smirked. "Nah, 3 days tops. That commander looks stubborn. He's going to try and conquer the jungle first." Another officer chimed in, shaking his head. $5 says they start shooting the trees out of frustration." More chuckles followed. The landing ramp extended with a metallic groan, settling onto the crushed remains of trees below. Thick grey smoke still rose from the hull, evidence of their less-than-perfect landing. But Supreme Commander Gorlak the Unquenchable strode forward, undeterred, eager to take his first step on conquered soil. Brugg followed, scanning the unfamiliar terrain, while Zargax cracked his knuckles, eager for battle. Behind them, squads of Xanthar warriors stepped into their new domain, ready to begin the glorious conquest. The moment they stepped outside, they were instantly betrayed. The air hit them like a solid wall, thick, wet, suffocating. It clung to their bodies, creeping beneath their exoskeletons, pooling into the gaps like an unwelcome invader. Gorlak paused mid-stride, his exoskeleton feeling oddly heavy. His carapace was built for the harsh, dry deserts of Xanthar Prime, where moisture was a rare and precious resource. Now, for the first time in his life, he felt damp. Brug fidgeted uncomfortably, wiping a hand over his face. He stared at his palm. It was wet? Sir, Brug cleared his throat, the air here is thicker than expected. Gorlak exhaled sharply. Yes, I noticed, but no matter, we will adjust. Zargax sniffed the air, flexing his muscles. The air is weak, it clings to us because it fears us. Brug glanced at him. That's not how air works. Silence, Brug, Gorlak snapped. Do not be rattled by minor inconveniences, this is nothing. Yet as they continued forward, the humidity refused to be ignored. It stuck to their exoskeletons, forming an annoying film of moisture that made every movement just slightly unpleasant. Their once pristine armor now glistened annoyingly in the filtered sunlight. A soldier adjusted his gear, muttering, "It feels like my own body is clinging to me." Another one grumbled, "Why does my carapace feel squishy?" Zargax let out a low growl, flexing his fingers. "I feel slower, like my own skin is trying to hold me back." Brug sighed. "That's called resistance, caused by the moisture in the—" "Do not speak of it!" Zargax roared. "I refuse to acknowledge its existence." Gorlak turned sharply, his expression stern. "Enough. We are warriors of the Xanthar Dominion. If a little damp air unsettles you, then you are unworthy of this conquest." His words were firm, absolute, and commanding. Then, from somewhere deep in the jungle, came the distant sound of thousands of insects buzzing at once. Gorlak hesitated for half a second before marching forward. "This is fine," he muttered under his breath. The Amazon humidity was already proving to be a mild but persistent annoyance for the Xanthar invaders. But still, they were warriors. They would endure. As the Xanthar warriors set up their camps and equipment, they became aware of a disturbing presence. Hundreds of glowing eyes stared at them from the canopy above. The creatures did not blink. They did not move. They simply watched. Gorlak scoffed. Puny creatures, what could they possibly do? Then all at once, a chorus of horrifying, guttural screams filled the jungle. Brug flinched. "By the sands, what is that?" Zargax clutched his rifle, looking around wildly. "Are we under attack?" No, it was monkeys, howler monkeys, and they were not pleased with the invasion and destruction of their home. The alien troops clutched their ears, groaning at the sheer sonic assault. It was like a war siren mixed with the sounds of a dying beast. Gorlak scowled. "Zargax, take care of this nuisance at once." Zargax stepped forward, puffing out his chest. His voice boomed through the jungle. "Tremble before me, pathetic beasts! I am Zargax, the Bone Cracker, destroyer of worlds." He raised his rifle and fired into the treetops. Bang! 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 The monkeys screeched and scattered. Leaves and branches rained down as they fled into the dense foliage. But just before the last of them disappeared, one stayed behind a little longer. A large, burly howler monkey perched on a thick branch, staring directly at Zargax. It tilted its head. Then, with deliberate slowness, it stuck out its tongue and wiggled its eyebrows. Zargax's grip tightened on his rifle. "You little—" Before he could fire, the monkey vanished into the treetops, its mocking laughter echoing through the jungle. Then, silence. Zargax puffed out his chest. "Ha! They know fear now." Gorlak smirked, placing a proud hand on Zargax's shoulder. "Excellent work, Bone Cracker. Our first victory on Earth." The Xanthar soldiers cheered. The great invasion of Earth had begun by winning a battle against monkeys. But the jungle was far from done with them. As night approached, the Xanthar camp was operational. Tents were erected, scanners were placed, weapons were prepared. The Xanthar invaders had survived planetary wars, plasma bombardments, and the harshest deserts of the cosmos. They had not, however, prepared for mosquitoes. It started as a minor inconvenience, a tiny, almost imperceptible whine in the thick jungle air. Then they heard it, a soft, high-pitched whine. At first it was barely noticeable, just a few faint buzzing sounds, easily dismissed. Then something pricked Gorlak's arm. He slapped the spot instinctively. What was that? Another one landed on Brug's neck joint. Zargax felt a faint sting on his exposed forearm. Then the buzzing intensified. What started as a few strange insects became dozens, then hundreds, then an entire cloud of them. The camp erupted into chaos. "They're attacking!" a soldier shrieked, slapping at his own body. "Where are they coming from?" Another warrior spun in circles, flailing his arms. Brugg stumbled backward, feeling something crawling into the cracks of his exoskeleton. He gasped. "They're finding the gaps! They have syringes!" "What?" Gorlak bellowed. Brugg shuddered violently. "They're inside, sir! Inside the armor!" Zargax roared, trying to swat at his own back. "I cannot reach them! I cannot reach them!" A warrior collapsed, rolling on the ground. "They're sucking my essence!" Another one panicked and ran full speed into a tree. One particularly large mosquito landed on Gorlak's forehead, its proboscis piercing into his thick plating. He froze. His eye twitched. With all the fury of a warlord, he backhanded his own face. It didn't work. The mosquito was still buzzing around there. Brugg was now hopping on one leg, scratching furiously at his inner joints. "Why do they only attack the soft parts?" Zargax howled like a wounded beast. "Show yourselves, cowards!" He began punching the air, completely missing every mosquito. A warrior collapsed into a puddle, twitching. "We are being drained. They are feasting upon our fluids." Gorlak, swatting uselessly at the swarm, clenched his fists and roared into the jungle. "Is this the best humans have to offer? Invisible bloodsuckers?" Somewhere in the distance a monkey howled in laughter. Brugg, ever the tactical genius, gritted his teeth. Enough of this. From his supply pack he pulled out a flare canister, cracked it open and hurled it to the ground. A thick, pungent smoke erupted, spreading rapidly through the camp. The effect was immediate. The mosquitoes scattered, fleeing the acrid fumes. The Xanthar warriors, however, started coughing violently. "Tactical genius, eh?" Gorlak wheezed, clutching his throat. "You're trying to poison us." Brugg shrugged, eyes watering. At least it worked. Zargax, on his hands and knees, gasped for air. "Prefer the mosquitoes." Gorlak glared at Brugg. "And now you have revealed our position, you fool." Brugg rubbed his temples. "Commander, with all due respect, we landed a giant spaceship in the middle of the Amazon rainforest. We crushed hundreds of trees, made enough noise to wake the dead, and have been screaming at insects for the last 10 minutes. He gestured vaguely at the sky. "I am fairly certain the humans are aware of us. In fact," he glanced at the treetops, "they're probably watching us right now." A long silence. Gorlak's eyes twitched. He slowly turned his head toward the jungle, scanning the thick vegetation. The shadows shifted slightly. The Xanthar invaders couldn't see them, but the jungle was watching, and from the distant human observatory, Harrison and Diaz were indeed watching. Harrison, taking a slow sip of coffee, chuckled, "Oh, we're watching all right." They both watched as a massive armored alien warrior ran full speed into a tree, desperate to remove a mosquito from his back. Diaz smirked. "And we're definitely laughing." After grueling effort and several arguments, the Xanthar warriors finally managed to set up a command tent on a slightly firmer patch of ground. It wasn't ideal. Most of the area was muddy, uneven, and sank when stepped on too aggressively, but it was the best they had. As night fell, the aliens activated floodlights illuminating the jungle around them. That's when they realized they had miscalculated. Severely. The jungle was not sleeping. It was watching them. From the treetops, glowing eyes peered down. The moment the lights flicked on, they blinked and shifted, following their every move. Unseen creatures howled, hissed, and cackled from the darkness. The leaves rustled with movement, but the aliens saw nothing. Then something big moved through the undergrowth. Very big. It exhaled. A deep, rumbling breath, the kind that predators make before a kill. The entire camp fell dead silent. A scout, visibly sweating, approached Gorlak. "Supreme Commander, we are surrounded." Zargax, still coated in mud from the earlier mishaps, cracked his knuckles. "Good," he grinned, baring his jagged teeth. "More things to break." Brugg pinched the bridge of his nose. Of course he'd say that. Then, before anyone could react, a terrifying, blood-curdling scream echoed from deep within the jungle. It wasn't human. It wasn't anyone from their crew. It was something else. Even Zargax's grin faltered. Brugg swallowed hard. "Sir, perhaps this is an opportune time to—" Then, from the canopy above, something enormous burst out of the trees. A gigantic, winged shape shrieked as it dove toward the camp. Absolute pandemonium erupted. The floodlights flickered as soldiers screamed and scrambled for weapons. Gorlak, despite everything, stood his ground. "Do not be intimidated. Hold your positions." Then, before he could finish, A massive insect the size of a small dog latched onto his exoskeletal arm. Gorlak screeched, flailing as the hulking bug dug its razor-sharp legs into his armor. Brug sighed, arms crossed. "Sir, I believe you were saying something about not being intimidated?" Gorlak, still screaming and shaking his arm, glared at him. "Shut up and get it off me!" As the Xanthar soldiers tried to compose themselves after the chaos, the floodlights flickered, casting eerie shadows across the camp. Then something emerged from the darkness. A creature with rough, armored scales, short but powerful limbs, and piercing yellow eyes. A caiman. It slithered from the muddy undergrowth, its toothy maw slightly open, tasting the air. One of the soldiers stumbled back, his voice shaky. "What is that thing? Some kind of primitive reptile," Brug muttered, eyeing it cautiously. "Not a threat unless we—" Then the water exploded. Something enormous launched itself from the riverbank, striking the caiman with terrifying speed. A massive, coiling body wrapped around the reptile in an instant, squeezing with merciless precision. The caiman barely had time to hiss before its bones snapped under the pressure. The jungle fell deathly silent as the Xanthar watched in horror. The creature was long, thick, a monstrous, green anaconda. It tightened its coils, and the lifeless caiman disappeared beneath the mass of muscle. Even Zargax, who usually thrived on violence, took a nervous step back. "By the stars, it just took it," one soldier whimpered. Brug, for the first time in his life, had nothing to say. Even Gorlak felt his confidence waver for a moment, but he quickly shook it off and straightened his posture. "Enough," he barked, forcing himself to ignore the primal fear creeping into his mind. "These beasts are nothing compared to the might of the Xanthar Dominion." He stepped onto a crate, addressing his troops. "Let tonight be a lesson. This world is wild, untamed, but we are conquerors. We have crushed planets beneath our feet, and tomorrow, when the first light of dawn rises, we will begin the conquest of Earth." The soldiers, though still uneasy, let out a forced cheer, but even as he spoke those words, Gorlak himself could feel it. The jungle wasn't just dangerous, it was wrong, and something about it was watching them. Sleep did not come. The air was hot and damp, but that wasn't the issue. The issue was the sounds. Hissing, chirping, chittering. Some things skittered outside the tents, their claws clicking against crates. A soldier swore he saw shadowy figures moving between the trees, but when he turned, nothing was there. Mosquitoes bit relentlessly, making sleep impossible. And then a low, guttural growl came from the jungle. The ground vibrated. A pair of glowing golden eyes appeared just outside the perimeter of the camp. A jaguar. The Xanthar froze. The great feline stalked between the trees, silent, watching them with a predator's patience. Zargax tightened his grip on his weapon, muscles tensed. "Let me fight it," he whispered, eager for battle. Brug grabbed his arm. "No, it's not attacking, yet." The jaguar blinked once. Then, as silently as it arrived, it vanished into the jungle. It didn't run. It simply melted into the darkness, as if to say, "I'll be back." No one slept. Morning could not come soon enough. The long, sleepless night dragged on as the Xanthar soldiers twitched at every rustling leaf, slapped at relentless mosquitoes, and flinched at the unseen horrors lurking in the darkness. Every chirp, hiss, and distant growl, a cruel reminder that the jungle was alive and watching. As the first light of dawn finally crept through the canopy, Gorlak straightened, forcing authority into his weary voice. "Brug, ready the troops. The moment we have waited for has arrived. We march now." Then a deep rumble echoed through the jungle. The soldiers tensed, instinctively gripping their weapons. Another beast? Another unseen terror lurking in the shadows? But then, drip, a single drop of water landed on Gorlak's forehead. He blinked. Another drop. Then 1,000. Within moments, the sky unleashed a torrential downpour. Gorlak stepped out of his tent, instantly drenched as rain pounded against his exoskeleton. He blinked up at the sky, mandibles twitching in disbelief. He had seen water before, of course. He had even tasted it once. But this was an ocean falling from the sky. This was water committing an invasion of its own. He scowled. "This is merely a minor inconvenience. The storm will pass in an hour or so." As if to personally spite him, a deafening thunderclap shook the ground. Lightning illuminated the jungle, casting terrifying shadows through the mist. Brug checked his tactical scanner. He frowned. "Sir, I have been monitoring Earth's weather patterns." "And?" Gorlak demanded. Brugg glanced up at the sky, then back to the scanner. It might rain until dusk. Gorlak twitched. Until dusk? Yes, Supreme Commander. But I thought this planet was supposed to be warm and humid. How can it be warm and humid while also... Another thunderclap, another downpour. Zargax, shivering, hugged himself. I do not like this. The sky should not leak this much. The warriors huddled inside their deployment shelters, watching the relentless rain pour down. Instead of offering shelter, the advanced material only trapped the rising humidity, turning the interiors into damp, suffocating ovens. The once solid ground beneath them grew softer with every passing hour, causing their tents to sink further into the mud. Some tried reinforcing the foundations, only to watch in despair as the wet soil swallowed their efforts whole. Brugg, observing the slow-motion disaster around him, sighed deeply. Sir, permission to update our tactical plans? Gorlak clenched his mandibles. Permission denied. He stood at the entrance of his high-tech command tent, watching the relentless downpour cascade off its alien alloy surface, staring into the abyss of his own choices. Tomorrow. Tomorrow would be better. Right? It rained for 24 hours, postponing their invasion. For all its misery, the rain had at least done one good thing. It had kept the jungle creatures at bay. No howling beasts, no biting insects. No angry jaguars launching themselves at terrified Xanthar warriors. For the first time since landing on this forsaken planet, they actually got some sleep. And then morning came. Zargax woke up first. He stretched, cracking his exoskeletal joints, and inhaled deeply. Ah, today is the day we conquer this wretched planet, he boomed. Then he turned toward the supply station and froze. Something was off. The larger storage crates were still there, standing just as they had been the night before. But the smaller ones, the ones filled with weapons, essential kits, and rations, were gone. The backup power generators remained, but the portable communication arrays were missing. Even Gorlak's emergency hydration tablets, his personal stash, had vanished. Only a few scattered crates remained, their lids half open and suspiciously empty. Zargax blinked, then he screamed. Gorlak jerked awake, instantly grabbing for his plasma pistol. What is it? Are we under attack? Brugg, already awake and scanning the area, rubbed his temples. Sir, I believe we've been robbed. Gorlak's mandibles twitched in fury. Humans, he growled. It must be those cowardly humans. They must have... Before he could finish, a rustling sound echoed through the trees, followed by low, guttural chattering. Leaves trembled, branches swayed. Something was up there. Then from the treetops, dozens of shapes emerged, their glowing eyes peering down like a council of judgmental spirits. Howler monkeys. They perched everywhere, on branches, vines, and even the remnants of the aliens' equipment. In their nimble hands they held stolen gear, ration packs, pieces of armor, and random bits of alien technology they clearly didn't understand but were very excited about. One monkey chewed on a ration pack, making exaggerated gagging noises before tossing it at another. A smaller one had somehow pried open a toolkit, flipping through alien gadgets as if it were deciding which ones looked the most fun to break. Another had worn a stolen Xanthar helmet, proudly adjusting it atop its head while the others screeched in approval. Then atop the highest branch, standing like a conquering general before his troops, was the large howler monkey that had teased Zargax before, and clutched in its furry hands was Zargax's rifle. It hooted triumphantly, raising the weapon over its head like a trophy of war. The entire jungle seemed to pause. Zargax's jaw dropped open, his eyes bulging in pure, unfiltered rage. He took one, trembling step forward, pointing a shaking claw at the victorious primate. "That is mine, you filthy tree rodent!" The large monkey tilted its head as if considering this. Then, with an almost deliberate smirk, it lifted the rifle and began pressing random buttons. A sudden plasma bolt shot into the air. The Xanthar troops dove for cover, screeching in panic as the rogue rifle discharged wildly, blasting a chunk out of a nearby tree. The monkeys exploded into chaos, hooting, shrieking, and leaping from branch to branch as if this was the most exciting game they had ever played. Brugg, who had been rubbing his temples in exasperation this entire time, slowly turned to Gorlak. "Sir," he muttered, "the monkeys now have superior firepower." The monkeys screeched again, waving their stolen rifles. Then, as quickly as they had appeared, they vanished into the jungle, taking all of the stolen supplies with them. leaving the mighty Xanthar Dominion's invasion force completely unarmed. Zargax, still staring at the jungle where the monkeys had vanished with their stolen supplies, finally broke. They took my plasma rifle. His voice cracked. Brugg sighed. Yes, Zargax, they took all our weapons. Zargax shook his head, traumatized. No, Brugg. My custom plasma rifle, the one with my name engraved on it and a hammer attached to it. Do you know what that means? Brugg pinched the bridge of his nose. That a monkey is now running around with your weapon, probably waving it like a toy? Zargax clutched his head in despair. It means I am no longer the Bone Cracker. The monkey is the Bone Cracker now. The warriors around him silently nodded in agreement. Gorlak's eye twitched. Brugg. Yes, Supreme Commander. Please tell me our backup supplies are intact. Brugg checked his inventory log, then visibly winced. Sir, the monkeys also stole the backup supplies. Gorlak's fist clenched. What about the emergency reserves? Brugg scrolled through his tablet, then slowly turned the screen around to show Gorlak. Emergency reserve status 11% remaining. Silence! Crash! Gorlak flipped over the nearest supply crate in rage. I will burn this entire forest to ashes, he roared. The remaining warriors stood motionless, too afraid to speak. Brugg, calm as ever, took a deep breath. Sir, respectfully. They stole the incineration cannon too. Gorlak froze. Brugg gestured to the jungle. The monkeys have those now. A distant plasma shot echoed from the treetops, followed by the sound of cheering monkeys. Zargax sank to his knees. We lost to monkeys. Gorlak seethed. No, this is only a temporary setback. He turned, rage burning in his eyes. Prepare the troops. We march toward the nearest human city immediately. We will complete our mission, even if we have to. A loud thunderclap interrupted him. The warriors all looked up. The clouds, once parted, were darkening again. Brugg checked his scanner, then sighed deeply. Sir, more rain incoming. The sky opened up and the mighty Xanthar Dominion, completely drenched. Again, a heavy silence fell over the camp, broken only by the relentless drumming of rain. Zargax, who once roared about crushing his enemies and bathing in their fear, just stood there, motionless, drenched and hollow-eyed. The fire in his warrior's heart had been extinguished. Without a word, he turned and started walking toward the ship, not stomping, not marching, just walking. Like a man who had looked into the abyss and found that the abyss was full of monkeys. Gorlak, their supreme commander, watched him go, his mandibles twitching. He opened his mouth, ready to shout one final, defiant order, but nothing came. There was no speech that could undo this, no strategy that could spin this into a victory. So with a deep, shuddering sigh, he followed. One by one, the mighty warriors of the Xanthar Dominion, once proud conquerors of worlds, now just tired, soaking wet losers, dragged themselves back to the SS Droughtbringer. Their boots squelched in the mud, their spirits gone, stolen alongside their weapons by jungle gremlins with opposable thumbs. The once mighty invasion force boarded their ship in total silence. No war cries, no salutes, just the awkward, damp shuffle of failure. As the engines roared to life and the warship lifted off, disappearing into the stormy sky, the howler monkeys erupted into victorious cheers, hooting, hollering, and waving their stolen loot like trophies. One particularly large monkey stood proudly atop a branch, clutching Zargax's rifle like a prize. Somewhere deep in the jungle, a jaguar purred contentedly. As the SS Droughtbringer disappeared into the stormy sky, the control room inside the human observatory fell into an odd silence. Lieutenant Diaz, still holding his coffee, let out a long breath. Wait, did they just arm the monkeys with alien tech? Harrison groaned. Great, let's just hope this doesn't turn Planet of the Apes into a documentary. Harrison, arms crossed, stared at the radar screen where the alien ship's signal was rapidly retreating. He shook his head. I mean, we've seen invaders get wrecked before, but this was just sad. A junior officer, still wiping away tears from laughing, hesitated. Should we, I don't know, send them a message? Like, better luck next time? Diaz snorted. Yeah, right after we send the monkeys a medal. Another officer sighed dramatically. Poor guys never even made it to an actual battle, just lost a war to mosquitoes and primates. Don't forget the rain, Harrison added. And the giant bug that nearly took their commander's arm, Diaz said, suppressing another chuckle. The room fell silent for a moment, some of them genuinely feeling a tiny bit of sympathy for the aliens. Then the junior officer muttered, So, think they'll be back? Diaz took a thoughtful sip of coffee. Maybe if they chose a better place to start the invasion. Harrison smirked. Yeah, like literally anywhere else. Another officer chuckled. Except Australia.